is a lunch that we do every year just to give you ladies an opportunity to hear from our student interns who are conservative activists on their campus. So each of them are going to come up and just share a little bit about their experiences on campus, how they got into conservative activism at their school and what they're doing to combat liberalism at their universities. So we will start first with one of our interns, Maggie Walsh from Rowan University in New Jersey.
Hi, girls. As Alyssa said, my name is Maggie Walsh. I'm 21 years old, and I go to Rowan University in New Jersey. I'll be a senior this upcoming fall, and I study radio, TV, and film with a minor in journalism. I want to talk to you guys how I became a conservative. I had, before the 2008 election, if you had talked to me about politics, I wouldn't have known anything, wouldn't have cared. And then that August day when Sarah Palin was chosen as McCain's running mate, I really identified with her. There was someone who could be my next door neighbor, my coach for a basketball team, anything like that. And she was just somebody I could identify with. So after that day, I fell in love with politics, did a lot of research because I was going to be 18, I was going to be able to vote. So I wanted to make a right choice, not only for my belief systems, but what I felt the country could use. At my school, I'm a communications major, which is pretty liberal, I would say, especially at my school. I go to school in New Jersey. I've taken classes in advertisement, journalism, TV, radio, public relations, all that kind of stuff. But the worst classes I've had with liberal bias are definitely my journalism classes, which you would think wouldn't be because they all talk about, being unbiased and not putting your beliefs into your pieces, but it's completely the opposite. The worst political bias I had a regular journalism class, and the one day our teacher was teaching us the fundamentals of journalism. Like I had said, don't put your beliefs in your pieces unless it's an opinion piece or an editorial piece, but especially don't put your political ideology in your pieces. And so I was like, oh, cool, a professor who understands, this is fundamental journalism. Not 5 minutes later, I'm not even kidding, 5 minutes later, he was talking about how people get their news these days, how a lot of people get their news from, Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert, where it's not exactly hard news, it's more kind of not a joke, but it's more comedy. And then he was sitting there and he said, oh, yeah, and I can't believe people make headlines like that stupid half-quitter governor from Alaska who sees Russia from her house, was what he said during our class. So normally I stay quiet in class. I'll speak up every now and again, but that just got to my last nerve. I hate the Alaska-Russia thing. She didn't say it. Tina Fey said it. Go back and look at it. And so I had to speak up. I was just so driven to speak up because it was just so wrong. And everybody's eyes were glazed over. No one had even heard it, but it jumped right to my last nerve. So I turned around, and I don't think he was expecting it either, because I was like, she never said that. Tina Fey said that, and not everybody thinks she's an idiot. So then all of a sudden, everybody turned around and looked right at me, and I was like, oh, great. And so I really don't think my professor was ready for that, and he was like, well, blah, 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 and he just made some comment, kind of just dismissed me. And so I kind of felt proud that day. I stood up for my beliefs and everything. So that was good. And it was funny, that exact day, hours later, was my interview for working as an intern at Claire Booth Luce. And it was the first time, and not the last time, that they've really lent me an understanding ear, because I told my story to one of the women who works there, Camille Hart, and she was appalled, equally as appalled as I was at my professor's statement that he had made. So it was nice feeling somebody understood what you're going through. Some advice I would say, make sure you join your college publicans, your college conservative group. If there's not one on campus, create one. When I was a freshman, I sought out my college Republicans club in the spring after the election because I was felt so defeated after 2008 because it was this whole grand coming of liberalism and great Barack Obama was the Messiah and everybody was crying in the streets. Oprah was weeping on someone's shoulder, and so it was just this is completely not anything that I wanted. And I was just so disheartened because it was the first time I really cared about politics, and it just didn't go the way I had hoped. And so I sought out my college Republicans, and I found it on Facebook. There were 3 members. 3. And so I wrote on the page, and I was like, "Do you guys have meetings?" Nobody wrote back for a while. Finally, the one guy did, and it was because so I went. And then there were 5 of us. So there were 5 of us who decided, okay, we're going to make this a real club on campus. We're going to work really hard. After that, we started working on campaigns. We worked for John Runyon, who's now in Congress, worked for Governor Chris Christie, who's now the governor of New Jersey. And we really made a difference. There was only 5 of us, but we made 10,000 phone calls on Chris Christie's behalf. And in Glassboro, which is the town my school is in, there were 2 Republican people who were running for town council. And it was the first time a Republican, it's a really Democratic town. And we knocked on every single member of Glassboro's house. We called every single person, every resident of the town to get them out to vote because it really does matter. And they didn't win, but they were pretty close. Another piece of advice I would give you guys, because you're all going to be heading into college pretty soon, like I said before, really pick your battles. When you're in class, especially depending on what major you're in, and it doesn't even really matter, I'm sure any major you're in, you're going to hear this. You're going to hear Moose joke about Sarah Palin, or Glenn Beck is crazy, don't listen to Fox News. You're going to hear it all the time. So you can be offended and be oh, there's that again. But you don't need to say something every single time because you kind of don't want to be that person who everyone's oh, there's that conservative again. But when it's relevant to what you're learning and it's just completely wrong what your professor is saying, that's when you want to speak up because you probably aren't the only conservative in your class. It's just other people are too afraid to stand up and say something because they know that their grades are in your professor's hands, which I know is it's worrisome that your professor could drop you a grade for being a conservative and speaking your mind. And so that's really important to be able to be the person to stand up and say something. And make sure you know your facts, too, because I've had it where my professor would just be saying, the most egregious lies, the craziest things ever, and everyone's just okay, my professor's saying it, so it must be true. And then I'll be wait a minute, and I'll get up and say something, and your professor will be state your sources. And you'll be well, you were just saying this, and you didn't state your source, but you, lowly college conservative, you will have to have a footnote on what you're talking about. So be aware of that. And Claire Booth Lewis actually had a really great quote where she said, "Courage is the ladder on which all other virtues mount." So you need to be the person in your classes, on your campus, even in your town, who has the courage to stand up and really believe in what you're talking about. Thank you.